Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to make your dry phase longer. So usually when people talk about extending their dry phase, they say don't forcefully extend your dry phase, because if you forcefully extend your dry phase, then you're going to have incorrect form, which is obviously not optimal. The reason your dry phase is so short, or however long it is purely because of how strong you are and how strong you are at being able to hold these low positions out of the blocks. And hearing that first, you might think, okay, well, if I want to have a longer dry phase, then it's simple. I just need to spend more time in the gym and get stronger. And that is true. However, it's only half of the story, because the other half is low. What is low? Because I can get low by just bending at the waist, but that's not optimal low. That's not efficient low. When we say low, we don't just mean stay down low, but we actually mean have very, very acute shin angles to the floor, which essentially means your shins are as low to the ground as possible with each step. Which means, first of all, when you come out the blocks, you need to come out low. And second of all, you need to make sure that your shin angles are low enough by making sure you're hitting the ground in the correct direction. To come out low, you do need to be extremely strong. So that is still true. However, to continue to stay low, you also need to be strong, whilst also making sure that you actually have the ability to have these low shin angles, because your shin angles will determine how the rest of your body is. Because if this is your body as you come out the blocks, so you come out the blocks like this, and your shin angles are like this. This is my femur and upper leg, and this is my shin and the back of my foot. If I come out like this is my first step, then when I push, my body is going to fix that angle. So right now, we're in the same angle, so my body isn't really going to go up by much. But if I put my leg here, my body's instantly going to shoot up. And if your shin angles aren't acute, you're instantly going to pop out of the blocks, purely because of your shin angles, not because of lack of strength. This is a form issue. If you pop out of the blocks, then in fact, I can't really think of a 1 time out of 10 where it wouldn't be because of your shin angles. Every single time you pop out of the blocks and you just go straight up, it's purely because your shins were vertical to the floor. They were perpendicular with the floor. Yeah, they were perpendicular, were they? Well, I mean, if this is the floor and this is your leg, your body is going to end up following the rest of your leg. Yeah, it is perpendicular. So if you have shin angles that aren't perpendicular, that are perpendicular to the floor the second you come out of the blocks, it can only make sense that you're instantly going to cut the drive short by no steps. Essentially, you're not going to take any steps once you've come out of the drive. And the way to extend the drive is to make sure that you actually have these acute angles and you sustain them for not as long as possible. You just sustain them until it no longer makes sense for them to be sustained, which is usually once you're extremely close to top speed. Because the elite athletes, they stay in their dry phase for about 30 to 40 meters. And then they go to the transition around that period as well. And they get to top speed and then they continue. If you're not anywhere near this, then the most obvious reason for why this would occur is because your shin angles aren't acute. So this is either a strength issue, a form issue, or both of them. But before always going to thinking, okay, I just need to squat more, deadlift more, then I'm going to fix a problem, you want to make sure you focus on your form. Because whilst getting more strength is great and all that's going to do is make it so that you pop up even easier. Because what's going to end up happening is, when you was weak, or if you've ever been weak, you'll notice that when you come out of blocks, you're going to have the most atrocious of shin angles, but your body isn't going to automatically adjust to the shin angle you just had. And yeah, it's probably because you was weak and this was like years before you got to the level you're at now, so your body doesn't automatically jump up. But it's also because you're not strong enough to produce enough force to force your body to snap and just fix its position so it corrects with the shin angle. However, what's going to end up happening anyway is you're just breaking at the waist, and that is just as bad as popping up straight away. But once you start to get stronger and stronger and stronger, the force that you produce in your leg has more of a control has more of a control over the rest of your body. So what will happen is the second you push off and you land with shin angles that are perpendicular to the floor, your body will just go from being like this to this, straight up. And if you was in the flow state, if you was relaxed and everything, it could break and you're going to just see everyone pull away from you, just like that. Purely because they're still in their drive phase, and whilst they're low, they're actually able to ensure that they have less air resistance, because when you're upright, you have air resistance on everything in front of you. But when you're downright in your drive, you've only have the top of your head, your shoulders, most of your torso is covered, and then just your legs, and obviously your arms are still having the air resistance. And this will you eventually get more air resistance as you go on, but making sure you stay low in the dry phase will ensure that you have less of that. So making sure that your shin angles are correct so you don't have to worry about this is extremely important, because maybe your dry phase is 10 meters or maybe it's even 20 meters. Regardless of where it is, if your shin angles don't stay low the entire time, you're just going to pop up. And obviously, after about 7 steps, your shin angles are going to start to become more and more vertical naturally, purely because you're starting to actually gather speed. And the only time your shin angles are actually that acute is when you're making these power steps for the first 5 steps. However, as long as these first 5 steps have extremely low shin angles, it's going to ensure that your body is naturally low anyway. So when you eventually come out of your power steps and you get more into using your tendons and everything, switching off your muscles from active work to passive work, and now your tendons are mainly doing the work, you're going to be lower naturally, which means your body's going to have to rise over time. Another way to increase your time in the dry phase is to make sure that the second your legs start making more vertical steps, you don't just go from this to this, you gradually rise. If you don't gradually rise, what's going to end up happening is obviously you're just going to pop out of the dry phase. You might think there's no point in staying in the dry phase anymore, because you're going to obviously feel a pull from your body to say, okay, let's start to go up. But if you realize this or not, this is naturally what's going to happen because your body wants to follow the angle of your shin. I'm not saying to resist it, but I'm saying to make sure that it's gradual. Like slowly start to lift every 1 or 2 steps until you're upright. Because when you're upright, you want to make sure you're extremely close to top speed. Because if you're not extremely close to top speed, then the fact that you're upright and you're not close to top speed means you're going to use more energy to try and get to top speed. Another thing is making sure that you don't stay too long in the dry phase. Just like with most things with sprinting, you have to get the just right amount. Obviously, it's tailored to yourself. So the just right amount for me could be staying in my dry phase for 8 meters, but for you, it might just be like 5-10 meters. Obviously, those are both exaggerations, but you want to make sure you get that just right, that Goldilocks amount. Because if you stay in the dry phase for too long, what's going to end up happening is, whilst you're in the dry phase, this is essentially the positions your body is in when it's trying to produce power. And in these positions, it can only really use your muscles. So your tendons aren't doing as much of the work as they're supposed to be. And if your tendons aren't actually able to do as much of the work as they're supposed to be, it can only make sense that you're going to be doing really well for this first 60 so meters. But near the end of the race, the people who are actually using their tendons can't waste and using less energy than you now, because because tendons use a lot less energy to propel you forwards than your muscles ever could. And the speed your muscles can propel you are extremely slow. They're just going to end up passing you, just making staying in a dry phase pointless. So we want to make sure that we have enough strength to stay in the dry phase. We have the correct low shin angles, and we know what the changing of our shin angles mean. And it'd also be quite useful to be able to see these in videos so you can actually see how your body adjusts to the shin angles you produce. And it's also extremely important that we understand when to come out of the dry phase efficiently. We don't want to just pop out. We want to make sure we gradually come out, and we want to make sure we don't stay in there for too long. If we stay in for too long, we're just going to end up losing the race. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comment section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe, helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.